From secret government announcements to final prayers whispered behind hospital walls, this is how every Kenyan president met their end. Some went out surrounded by power and ceremony, while others faded quietly, far from the State House spotlight. Let's start at the beginning, with Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, Kenya's founding father, the man whose face still stares at you from every banknote. In August 1978, after more than a decade leading the nation, Kenyatta's health began failing. The details were kept top secret, but witnesses say he collapsed in Mombasa after complaining of chest pains. The official report called it a natural death, but rumors swirled that he'd been unwell for years. His final moments, surrounded by aides at the State House in Mombasa, the father of the nation breathed his last at 3 a.m. And within hours, Arap Moi was sworn in as president. No famous last words were ever recorded, but if legacy could speak, his would probably say, "Harambee forever." But if you thought that was quiet, wait until you hear how Moi's story ends. After Mzee Kenyatta's sudden death, power passed to a man who would rule longer than anyone else in Kenya's history, Daniel Toroitich Arap Moi. Known as Nyayo, meaning footsteps, Moi promised to walk in Kenyatta's path. But let's be real, those footsteps led him down a 24-year marathon of power, politics, and prayer rallies. For decades, Moi seemed unstoppable. He survived coups, scandals, and old age itself. Even when he finally left office in 2002, at nearly 80 years old, he still looked strong, always with that signature rungu in hand and a perfect suit crease. But behind the public image, age was catching up fast. In the 2010s, Moi started struggling with breathing issues and recurring health problems. He was quietly moved in and out of the Nairobi hospital for treatment. In 2019, he was admitted again, and this time he never left. On February 4, 2020, Kenya woke up to breaking news. Former President Arap Moi has died at the Nairobi hospital. He was 95. The cause? Officially, a long illness. Unofficially, time had finally caught up with Nyayo. Family members said his last moments were peaceful, surrounded by loved ones. No dramatic final quote, no grand declaration, just quiet. For a man who ruled with an iron hand, he left with a whisper. And when the nation gave him a full state funeral, his old Nyayo marching song echoed once again: peace, love, and unity. But the story doesn't end there, because the man who replaced Moi would take Kenya through one of its most transformative and tragic decades. When Moi finally stepped down in 2002, Kenya was ready for change. And so entered Emilio Stanley Mwai Kibaki, the soft-spoken economist with a sharp mind and an even sharper sense of humor. Kibaki came in as the man who promised to fix everything: the roads, the economy, even the politics. And for a while, he did. Nairobi's skyline began to rise. Free primary education became real, and the shilling actually started behaving. But behind that calm demeanor was a man constantly battling pain, both political and physical. After a serious car accident in 2002, Kibaki suffered long-term leg and back injuries, yet he kept showing up, smiling, limping, and leading. By the time he left office in 2012, he was one of Kenya's most respected presidents, known for his quiet efficiency and one-liners like, "We cannot all be politicians. Some of us must be left to make money." Classic Kibaki. But retirement wasn't kind to him. His health declined in the late 2010s, and rumors about his frailty began spreading. He was flown abroad for treatment multiple times, but eventually the old professor couldn't fight anymore. On April 21, 2022, the State House made it official. It is my sorrowful duty to announce the passing of His Excellency Mwai Kibaki, the third President of the Republic of Kenya.
He was 90 years old. The cause was reported as a long illness. Those who saw him near the end said he was peaceful, often surrounded by his children and grandchildren. No public record of his final words exists, but if there were, they'd probably be something dry and witty like, "At least the economy is still growing." Kibaki was laid to rest in his hometown of Othaya, the place he once called home of good peace and thinking. And while Kenya mourned, a new generation of leadership was already taking shape, led by a man who grew up watching Kibaki from the front row of Parliament. When Mwai Kibaki finally handed over power in 2013, it felt like history coming full circle, because the next man to take the oath was none other than the son of Kenya's founding father, Uhuru Kenyatta. It was almost poetic. Jomo Kenyatta built the nation, and Uhuru was now set to shape its future. At 51, he was young, confident, and modern. He talked about digital governance, infrastructure, and something called the Big Four agenda. But leaving Kenya in the 2010s wasn't easy. There were terrorist threats, economic strain, and a deeply divided political landscape. Still, Uhuru managed to serve 2 full terms, earning both praise and criticism, as most presidents do. But this time, the story doesn't end in death. Not yet anyway. Uhuru remains very much alive, living a quieter life since leaving office in 2022. Now mostly out of the spotlight, he occasionally reappears for diplomatic meetings, family events, or to pay respects at state funerals, including that of his predecessor, Mwai Kibaki. Unlike his father, whose final moments were shrouded in secrecy, Uhuru's chapter is still being written, and while he no longer carries the weight of the presidency, he still carries a name that built a nation. So for now, Uhuru Kenyatta's story ends not with final words, but with a pause, a reminder that even power is temporary, but legacy lasts generations. And speaking of legacies, the next man to take over wasn't born into power. He fought, hustled, and clawed his way to the top from a place few expected. If Uhuru Kenyatta was born into the State House, William Ruto built his own road to it, literally. From selling chickens by the roadside in rural Uasin Gishu to becoming the 5th president of Kenya, Ruto's journey sounds like a movie script about grit, faith, and raw ambition. When he took office in 2022, the economy was struggling, the cost of living was rising, and politics had never been more polarized. But Ruto came in with his signature energy, fiery speeches, endless tours, and that confident smile that says, "I've been counted out before." As of today, Ruto is very much alive and still running the show. But being president in Kenya isn't exactly a stress-free job. Every decision brings critics, and every headline comes with pressure. It's a position that tests both your faith and your health. Still, Ruto often says his strength comes from God, and you can bet he plans to be around for a long time. But one thing is certain. In Kenya, power has always come with a price. From Mzee Kenyatta's quiet collapse in Mombasa, to Moi's long goodbye, to Kibaki's final moments in hospital, each leader left behind a chapter in the country's story and a lesson about time, power, and legacy. In just 6 decades of independence, Kenya has had 5 presidents. 1 died in office, 2 passed peacefully after retirement, and 1 still wakes up every morning in the State House. From the man who shouted Harambe to the one who preached Hustler Nation, their journeys tell the same truth, that no matter how powerful, every leader eventually faces the same fate. Some left behind monuments, others left behind memories, but all of them, in their own way, helped write the story of Kenya itself. And if history teaches us anything, it's that presidents may die, but the nation always lives on.